Let's get right into what's moving markets though with Peter Mcguire from XM. Peter, good to see you. We are expecting potentially December to kick off with records here.
Exactly. Good morning, Juliette. I tell you what, it was dynamic last week, and when you saw the Russell, that's the one to watch. I think all the traders need to be conscious of it. It was outstanding, the performance for the month. Let's see how this month goes. I'm expecting it to be, again, very, very hot. So, it's a place to be. US equities, our equities, and at the moment, don't stand in the way of it because it'll run you over.
Exactly. Don't want to get in the way of that train or the Santa rally, as we're going to start calling it now. Let's take a look at non-farm payrolls, though, because that's going to be the key focus. Now that Thanksgiving is out of the way, I should say, is this going to sort of corroborate bets somewhat, Peter, on the Fed potentially pausing?
Absolutely. I think so. Look, we've got to see how the numbers drop, Juliette. It's too hard to put a number out there considering what happened last month at 12,000. So is it going to rebound back to the 200,000 handle? Who knows? Let's see it drop. Let's see the impact. And then naturally the decision-making process from the Fed and how that all rolls, because you've got 35% chance of policymakers sitting on the sidelines in December. That does mean 65% say it's a go. But you've also got, what's interesting, is a 37% probability of sitting on the sidelines December and January. So it all depends on the numbers. That's what it comes down to. And you've been in it long enough, you realise numbers drive decision.
They do indeed. We've got some numbers of our own, GDP coming through this week. Peter, really interesting that a lot of banks now, or economists I should say, have pushed back their RBA forecasts, including AMP and ANZ on Friday. So the likelihood potentially of a May cut, is that still on the cards?
Well, it is on the cards, Juliette, but you've also got to appreciate what happens as far as inflation over that time. We've got to look at as far as GDP, and that seems to be the first off-ramp. You're going down a big hill, and maybe the first off-ramp's going to be May. It could be pushed out further. We've just got to see how that weighted CPI numbers are, all of that as far as Q3 also. So the numbers drop, they tell the story, and we've just got to see, weighted CPI held steady at 2.1% year on year, but headline rose to 2.3% from 2.1%. So that's the issue. Weighted and trim mean rates, Q3, Juliette, were 3.8 and 3.5% respectively. So the numbers, again, we've just got to sit here, take a deep breath and wait for them to drop.
What is it all going to mean for the Aussie, Peter, particularly as we are watching the strength in the greenback ahead of the inauguration of Donald Trump?
Yeah, US dollar index, you got the storyline is 105.78. It's given up a lot of that hot steam, Juliette. It's nearly from that 107.50. It's really unwound a fair bit in the last week. It's been a great market for short, US dollar against everything else. Aussie dollar sitting there at 65.14. I'm expecting maybe a little bit further, rally to the upside. We'll wait for the numbers to drop, but you could see a little bit, 65.5 by weekend. Again, it's so many varying themes, all impact decisions, and traders are long at the moment.
We're also watching very closely what's going to happen with the loonie. Of course, Canada's economy probably a lot more like ours than the US. They're awaiting employment numbers too. What are you seeing in sort of momentum for the loonie, Peter?
Well, that's been sold off, and when you're thinking about the impact, Canada's under a fair bit of pressure, Juliette. So I feel as though that loonie you may hit a 141, 142. Are you going to see, rate cuts? How aggressive are they going to be in the next number of meetings moving forward? It's been a fantastic market for trade, and traders all over the globe are really stacking positions as far as loonie. So I'm just sitting here observing it and seeing what the opportunities are. But you've got to be across the currency complex because of the dynamic nature of it, Juliette. That's where the biggest market in the world, what does it trade? 6 trillion a day.
Indeed. The euro as well, though, watching quite a lot of momentum here. CPI, is failing to surprise somewhat. And we did see the euro fall on Friday, nearing 105.75 at the close. What's the next sort of litmus test for the euro?
It's got to be a 106, but I mean, every time that it was oscillating down to that 104.50, everyone was calling it maybe parity. You can't rule that out, but at the moment it's whipsawing, and like any market that gets oversold, it just booms to the upside. And from a technical standpoint, it was a great market to look at that reversal. So you're running at 105.70. Maybe you might see a 106. We'll just see what happens to US dollar this week. Again, all of those numbers. You keep an eye on the ECB inflation, Juliette. 2.2% year on year. It ticked up from 2%. So are we going to see another 50 basis point? What's the progress moving forward from the ECB? We've just got to, again, see how the numbers impact and what happens in December. I think it's going to be a very dynamic month.
Well, speaking of how dynamic it's going to be, do you think in some sense, Peter, a lot of the momentum has already been factored in since the Trump election win, in that sense that potentially when we normally talk about the Santa rally, maybe Santa came early?
Yeah, you've got to say, I mean, it was dynamic, Juliette, from the Russell. You can't take your eye off that. It was just extraordinary what you've seen as far as a push-up. Dow's up, the Dow's, we're going to breach that probably tonight, 44,910. Who could have imagined you'd be through 45,000? You've got the way the S&P is going, you'll be at 6150 by possibly weekend. And NASDAQ, creeping ever closer to 20,000. So all of that is really quite, bullish tones, and it's just a place to trade. That post-Thanksgiving rally, I think it's really going to gain some momentum this week. And keep your eyes and hands firmly on the wheel.
What about for the Bank of Japan, obviously in the other direction there to many of the central banks, but we saw that big momentum in August with the yen carry trade unwound somewhat. What's the sort of forecast now for what we might see the yen do and the Bank of Japan do coming up at their next meeting?
Well, I look at the yen, it's under 150 at 149.60. They've spent about $100 billion on intervention, Juliette, over the year. So that's quite a large, wallet of money, isn't it? 100 billion. And I think they've got the result of what they were after. As far as policy, what goes on, I'm sitting on the sidelines. I'm not sure whether they're going to press a go button. I'm just sitting here again, seeing the trade. What happens this week? You've got a red hot stock market. And naturally, the yen has been a great market to look at from a, big swings up and then it pulls back. So possibly a 147, 148 this week. We'll just wait and see. But again, a great market to participate in.